And his fine print was hot dog water in its absurdity hopes to encourage critical thinking related to product marketing.
That is, God bless a free market. Fantastic.
But bottled water is a scam in and of itself.
Literally,
it really is. We're actually, if our grandparents, well, if some of them are alive, but if your great grandparents were alive and they said you're actually paying for water, they would be outraged. Outraged, I tell you.
If you package it pretty, Americans will pretty much buy anything.
That is
true.
But you can make all of those claims. I think it's hysterical. But you know what?
It is hilarious.
I actually believe that. I think hot dog water is quite good.
I wonder if someone drank it.
I would like hamburger water.
But I mean,
I would like water.
It's a lot like the thesis that, you know, there's a sucker born every minute. But that makes it performance.
Jesse Water. There should be Jesse Water. Jesse Water.
Black ice water. How about
that? I'd be like a glacier. Anyway,
those are coming back, by the way. Did you read that?
No more global warming.
All right, gentlemen, that's it for us. See you guys Monday. Special report up next with Bret Baier. Hey, Bret.
Hey, Juan, thanks. President Trump tells congressional Republicans to stop wasting their time on immigration legislation until after the midterms. A major U.S. Supreme Court ruling about your privacy rights in the digital age. And Charles Krauthammer, in his own words, this is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Bret Baier. We begin with mixed messages coming out of the White House on immigration. President Trump is advising his Republican colleagues to wait until after the fall elections to push reform legislation, casting Democrats as obstructionists, bent on spreading what he calls phony stories of sadness and grief about children at the border. This comes just 3 days after calling together those lawmakers and expressing support for their efforts to pass a reform bill. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts joins us from the North Lawn with our top story tonight. Good evening, John.
Bret, good evening to you. It has been an entire week of arm twisting and angry rhetoric, yet the White House and lawmakers appear no closer to fixing the problem on the border than they were when the week started.
President Trump sought to change the subject today, shifting the focus from the plight of illegal immigrants on the border to Americans who have lost a loved one at the hands of a criminal illegal alien.
Where is the media outrage over the catch and release policies that allow deadly drugs to pour into our country? Where is the condemnation of the Democrat sanctuary cities that release violent criminals into our communities and then protect them?
President Trump has met several times with so-called angel families, had them as frequent guests at campaign rallies, now engaging them to put pressure on Congress to pass a border security and immigration reform measure.
Let's work together and get this done. All politicians, I don't care what side you're on, you don't want your child in a casket or in an urn. So get it together, for God's sake, for this country, for our citizens.
Congress appears no closer to reaching agreement on the way forward. A conservative bill was defeated yesterday. Consideration of a compromise measure got pushed from today to next week after leaders discovered it had less support than the one that failed.
We're trying to get everybody a consensus bill, if you will, get everybody together.
President Trump again sent House Republicans scratching their heads in confusion today. After pushing them earlier this week to pass an immigration measure, he tweeted, "Never mind this morning." Republicans should stop wasting their time on immigration until after we elect more senators and congressmen women in November, he said. That tweet stood in sharp contrast to what the president said yesterday, that Congress needs to come together and act to fix what he calls America's broken immigration system.
I'll invite Senator Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They can come over. They can bring whoever they want. But the lawmakers have to sit down and they have to do something.
But the president did seem to have one thing squarely in focus, his belief that Democrats have no intention of giving him what he wants on immigration.
He is taking infant children hostage, wrenching them from the arms of their parents, traumatizing them, perhaps for life, for the purposes of forcing us, apparently, to make an agreement that we think is bad for dreamers, bad for our immigration system.
As a California judge weighs whether to allow DHS to detain children indefinitely with their parents,
flood the streets with justice.
Opponents of the president's zero-tolerance policy made their displeasure known, with an early morning protest outside Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen's house. President Trump not about to give in to the pressure, tweeting, "We cannot allow our country to be overrun by illegal immigrants," as the Democrats tell their phony stories of sadness and grief, hoping it will help them in the elections.
That administration official tells Fox News tonight that some 500 children who were separated from their parents have now been reunited with them. In many cases, the reunions happen within 3 days, but that still leaves about 1,800 children who are being housed apart from their parents. Bret?
John Roberts live on the North Lawn. John, thank you. Today is the deadline for the Justice Department to release documents related to the use of sources in the Russia collusion investigation. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harris tells us where things stand at this hour. Good evening, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Bret. Two sources close to the matter tell Fox News that the Justice Department significantly ramped up its production of records this week for the 3 House committees. But a key set of documents about when the Russia case began in 2016 was not provided. The congressional committees are expecting a letter from the Justice Department tonight, either asking for more time or explaining why they cannot comply with the outstanding congressional subpoenas. Last Friday, the House Speaker met with the FBI Director, Deputy Attorney General, as well as the 3 Republican chairmen, and went line by line through the outstanding requests. The FBI and DOJ were given until last Sunday to hand over records about intelligence, including the use of alleged informants that kick-started the Russia collusion probe. With that deadline missed and the looming deadline today, at his weekly news conference, the House Speaker said contempt of Congress is on the table.
They've been dragging their feet over the Justice Department to giving Congress. They could have spared the country a whole bunch of drama if they would have complied with these documentary requests months ago when they were made in the first place.
Multiple sources described last Friday's meeting as rare and impactful because new information came to light that appears to move up the timeline, with the FBI taking investigative steps before the Russia case officially opened July 31st, 2016. The sources said Congressman Gowdy's outspoken statements on Fox News Sunday reflected the new information.
There is no ambiguity. The Speaker of the House was really clear. You're going to comply or there's going to be floor action, and I think they got the message.
And floor action would be
the full panoply of constitutional weapons available to the people's house.
House Democrats charge the records request is an effort to help President Trump and undermine the credibility of special counsel Robert Mueller. In a separate development, Attorney General Jeff Sessions told a radio show that he understands FBI agent Peter Strzok has lost his security clearance. After Strzok was recently walked out of FBI headquarters, both are indicators the Inspector General's findings are having an impact, Bret.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
A major ruling tonight by the nation's highest court on privacy in the digital age. Justices say police generally need a search warrant to track your movements from your cell phone information. My colleague and anchor of Fox News at Night, Shannon Bream, is with us with this and other things from the Supreme Court. Good evening, Shannon. So how does today's ruling really impact the average American?
Well, if you've got a cell phone, it matters. This all stems from a 2011 case. Police were tracking a string of robberies. Well, they were able to compel 2 wireless carriers to turn over cell site location information, or CSLI, which basically gives a picture of where a cell phone user is and when. They use that to put one of the suspects at the sites of all the robberies, and then they were able to get that information, by the way, without ever using a warrant. Well, writing for the 5-4 majority, Chief Justice Roberts said this, quote, "In light of the deeply revealing nature of CSLI, its depth, breadth, and comprehensive reach, the fact that such information is gathered by a third party does not make it any less deserving of Fourth Amendment protection." So he said, yes, there can be exceptions, but generally, as you said, moving forward, police are going to need a warrant to get that kind of information from your cell, Bret.
Now, Monday, the court's term is scheduled to wrap up. What big cases are we still waiting for there?
Well, there are several, but the 2 biggies are, of course, Travel Ban 3.0. The justices are looking at the limits of executive power and the president's order regarding specific limits and bans on travel from a number of different countries. Also, a case involving an Illinois social worker who is challenging being forced to pay union dues or fees. He says he doesn't want to be forced to subsidize their political speech. That could have a huge impact. The opinions come next at 10 a.m. Eastern on Monday.
And there was big news for online retailers and shoppers yesterday at the court. How's that going to play out?
Well, that case involved a South Dakota law authorizing the collection of state taxes from online retailers doing business with people who actually live in South Dakota, even if the companies themselves didn't have any actual physical presence in the state. Now, that physical presence had been the standard according to a 1992 Supreme Court ruling. The justices noted that less than 2% of Americans even had internet access back then. They say things have changed greatly. So they upheld South Dakota, the law there, meaning that e-commerce businesses are likely to have to start collecting state sales taxes wherever they do business all across the country, Bret.
You know, if people don't think that the U.S. Supreme Court matters, when you hear these cases one after another that affect everybody, it really does, and that it matters politically. Are there any indications that we could be looking at a retirement on the court?
You know, it's always possible. We'll be watching next week. Justice Anthony Kennedy, who is the swing vote, there was a lot of speculation last year. He's now getting pressure again from the Hill, from folks who say we don't want to take the potential that the GOP loses the Senate and then they're really going to have a tough time getting anyone confirmed. But I think he's resisting the pressure. He's hired his full complement of clerks. Everyone else has as well. So it feels less like he would go this year, but we'll be standing by to see if anyone does.
Yes, we will. Shannon, as always, thank you. President Trump is again promoting Congressman Ron DeSantis to be the Republican nominee for governor in Florida. He sent out a new tweet today calling DeSantis a brilliant young leader. Our latest Fox News poll indicates State Agriculture Commissioner Adam Putnam is ahead of DeSantis, but 39% of voters in Florida say they are still undecided. We will have a debate between the top two candidates live from Orlando next Thursday night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, hosted by Martha McCallum and yours truly. This evening, correspondent Peter Ducey looks at how that race in Florida is shaping up.
The early frontrunner in the fight to be Florida's Republican nominee for governor. How are you? Adam Putnam, the agriculture commissioner, and his platform is focused on a lot more than crops and livestock.
Well, what we're seeing is forces from the left come into Florida to hijack our politics. And it's not because they care about our schools. It's not because they care about our business climate. It's not because they care about how much traffic there is on the Florida Turnpike. It's because they're choosing Florida as a proxy fight for the war on the White House in 2020.
So help me God. The last three governors in Florida have all been Republicans: Jeb Bush, Charlie Crist, and Rick Scott. The state is also home to the highest percentage of residents 65 and over in the U.S.
They want a place where they can retire and have government off their back. So a lot of these voters, this older generation, tend to come out in when they vote in higher numbers.
Congressman Ron DeSantis has never won a statewide election, but finds ways for Florida voters to keep tabs on him on Capitol Hill.
I am earning my paycheck. I mean, I'm up here fighting. We're trying to hold the Peter Strzok's and the Comeys accountable.
And doing that caught President Trump's attention. He tweeted today, Congressman Ron DeSantis, a top student at Yale and Harvard Law School, is running for governor of the great state of Florida. Ron is strong on borders, tough on crime, and big on cutting taxes, loves our military and our vets. He will be a great governor and has my full endorsement.
As governor of Florida, you're going to have a relationship with the White House. We have a hurricane, hopefully not. We need aid. I call the president directly. He's going to take my call.
Putnam supports Trump too, but doubts DeSantis can use D.C. connections to win.
This is a Florida-based race, and Washington is not going to get it done. And dialing in a gubernatorial campaign from out of state, long distance, isn't going to get it done.
Ultimately, this race's result may cause a ripple effect felt far from Tallahassee.
As Florida goes, so the nation goes. We're a swing state, we're an important state, and I would like to think that we set the policy here in the state of Florida for the rest of the nation.
Outside of D.C., Florida winds up being the backdrop for more major political news than anywhere else because that's where the president's Mar-a-Lago estate is. And his involvement in this race could make a big difference as Republican primary voters there give him a sky-high 86% approval rating. Bret?
Peter, thank you. Now to Charles Krauthammer. Reaction has been pouring in from all over the country and from around the world following news of Charles Krauthammer's death yesterday. Tonight, Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz, looks at how the Krauthammer style of analysis has shaped the way news is covered today. Good evening, Howie.
Bret, good evening. Charles Krauthammer was a powerful voice at this network, but it was in his writing for the Washington Post and Time magazine that he may have had his greatest impact on the journalism business. Left-wing commentators viewed him with admiration, and for those like liberal Post columnist Gene Robertson writing on the same subject, a little nervousness.
I'd always give it another, my columns, another read or two, because I knew that Charles would attack, he would sort of pre-attack all the weak points in the argument and pick them apart.
He fits into a tradition, if you think about people like Bill Buckley and what Bill Buckley meant for conservative thought in this country. Then you come to people like Bill Safire, who came out of the Nixon administration.
He began as a Walter Mondale speechwriter and a New Republic writer before his views evolved. It was Krauthammer, the wordsmith, who coined the phrase Bush derangement syndrome for that president's fiercest critics, and Krauthammer who defined President Reagan's foreign policy.
He invented the Reagan doctrine, not Reagan. It codified what a lot of sort of amorphous feelings that people on the right had.
Krauthammer took plenty of flack for his steadfast support for the Iraq War and was very tough on President Obama. Yet he was equally comfortable taking swipes at Hillary Clinton.
What she needs are lying lessons from her husband, who was one of the great liars of all time, could do it with a smile and charm.
And at Donald Trump.
Presidents don't talk like this. They never have. This is what it sounds like when you're living in a banana republic.
But he occasionally praised President Trump as well. As New York Times columnist Bret Stephens said, the game for him was philosophical, not partisan. His conservatism was never about getting Republicans elected. He ranged widely as a writer, from his beloved baseball to a cheeky column called In Defense of the F Word. He dictated his columns because he was unable to type, but rarely spoke of his disability.
You're betraying your whole life if you don't say what you think, and you don't say it honestly and bluntly.
Charles could be blunt, but he was never nasty, a marked contrast to today's angry, outraged, name-calling brand of punditry. He was trained as a medical doctor, but he used a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, to go after his targets. And in that sense, Bret, he lifted everyone's game.
Yeah, he really did. He's missed. Howie, thank you. Later tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, a special hour-long presentation about Charles' life in his own words. Later this hour, we'll have a special all-star panel looking at Charles' life and legacy. Charles Krauthammer was 68.
Coppertone Sport, proven to protect street skaters and freestylers. Stops up to 97% UV. Lasts through heat, through sweat. Coppertone, proven to protect.
The ADT yard sign stands watch over your home and family with 140 years of tested, trusted, 24/7 protection. Now get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring at just $28.99 a month. About $1 a day. Call today.
Find the remote yet?
Nah. Oh, honey, look, your old portable CD player.
Oh, wow.
Hey, my high school retainer.
Oh.
What?
It's early 90s sitcom star Dave Coulier.
Cut it out! What year is it?
As long as stuff gets lost in the couch, you can count on Geico saving folks money. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The political thriller of the decade. Engrossing from page one. This book moves like Air Force One, big and fast. Bravo, James Patterson and Bill Clinton. The reader gets a hell of a story. It's the day of the jackal for the 21st century. Don't miss Bill Clinton and James Patterson's mesmerizing thriller, The President is Missing.
I want to make cars fly. I love turning old stuff into something amazing. I want to plant a garden for the whole world.
We grow up, but we never stop dreaming. Here at Coke, we challenge ourselves and the status quo to produce innovations like renewable fuel, more energy-efficient vehicles, and food for all. Because what drives us most is challenge itself.
Tonight, people are going to want to talk about my unusual history.
It was his life in his words.
Charles Krauthammer, a look back at his extraordinary journey.
From roof to foundation, the damage to your home can be devastating, from clogged gutters, leaking roofs, rotting wood and fascia, and flooded basements. Protect your entire home with Leaf Filter, the nation's #1 rated gutter protection system. Once our ladders go up, you can put yours down forever.
One of the things that I like the most is that I don't have to get back on the ladder anymore.
Leaf Filter starts by cleaning, sealing, and realigning your gutters. We then install our micro mesh screen over your existing gutters, which is guaranteed to filter out everything except for water.
Trying other products is what made us finally go to Leaf Filter.
And Leaf Filter's lifetime transferable warranty makes it an extraordinary value.
Leaf Filter is going to make my home more valuable, especially when I go to sell it.
Call 833-376-8131 or go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate. Call or log on today and save 15%.
A Commerce Department official tells Fox News Chinese telecommunication giant ZTE has paid a $1 billion fine. It will also put $400 million, according to officials, in an escrow account. It's part of a settlement reached earlier this month to regain access to the U.S. market. The U.S. government punishment on ZTE in April over illegal shipments to Iran and North Korea. The U.S. Senate, meantime, is trying to overturn the Trump administration's agreement with ZTE. Stocks were mixed today. The Dow gained 119, snapping an 8-day losing streak. The S&P 500 was up 5. The Nasdaq lost 20. For the week, the Dow tumbled 2 percentage points. The S&P 500 dropped 9/10. The Nasdaq fell 7/10. President Trump is threatening a 20% tariff on vehicles assembled in the European Union. It's just the latest volley in what some consider the beginning of a trade war between the U.S. and its allies. Deirdre Bolton of the Fox Business Network joins us from New York with an update. Good evening, Deirdre.
Good evening, Brett. Some strategists say massive tariffs on European car makers could cause economic chaos. Here's the president's tweet from earlier today. Based on the tariffs and trade barriers long placed on the U.S. and its great companies and workers by the European Union, if these tariffs and barriers are not soon broken down and removed, we will be placing a 20% tariff on all their cars coming into the U.S. Build them here. Ford and GM fell right away, as did European auto stocks. Economists say, though, it's complicated to put tariffs on BMW and Mercedes-Benz. Both have a huge presence in the U.S. In September, the parent of Mercedes announced a $1 billion investment in its Alabama plant. The Peterson Institute says a 25% tariff on imported autos would result in 195,000 lost U.S. auto worker jobs. The U.S. and the EU are already in a trade spat. The EU announced a 25% tariff on American goods, motorcycles, steel, bourbon, jeans, in retaliation for U.S. tariffs on European steel and aluminum. Trade tensions were the clear driver of market activity all week. It started on Monday. President Trump asked his administration to identify $200 billion worth of Chinese goods for additional tariffs at a rate of 10%. Beijing stated it would respond in kind. So trade-sensitive stocks lower for most of the 5 days. Boeing, Caterpillar, United Technologies, Dow, DuPont, GE, all examples. China's stock market fell too. The Shanghai Composite hit a 2-year low. Sources telling us that some at the White House are trying to restart talks with China to avoid a full-blown trade war. Most say investors can manage trade tensions, but not trade wars. Brett, back to you.
Deirdre, thank you. Up next, science fiction becomes science fact, a new way to go from one place to another at incredible speeds. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 35 in Orlando, where officials say their airport will become the first in the nation to require a face scan of passengers on all international flights. The order includes U.S. citizens. About 9 airports already use face scans for some departing international flights. Fox 29 in San Antonio, as the Texas Supreme Court rules against the city of Laredo's ban on plastic bags. Laredo Merchants Association brought that lawsuit against the city, arguing that a state law on solid waste overrides that ban. The court agreed. Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he hopes Austin and other cities that enacted bag bans will voluntarily bring their ordinances into compliance with state law. And this is a live look at Salt Lake City from Fox 13. The big story there tonight, the state's election office is working with the Homeland Security Department to test the strength of Utah's voter database. It comes ahead of next week's primary election. A local security expert tells the station a government team essentially tries to hack into the system to determine vulnerabilities. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.
You might take something for your heart or joints, but do you take something for your brain? With an ingredient originally found in jellyfish, Prevagen is the #1 selling brain health supplement in drugstores nationwide. Prevagen, the name to remember.
It's just a burst pipe. I can fix it.
No.
With Claim Rate Guard, your rates won't go up just because of a claim.
I totally could have.
No.
Switching to Allstate is worth it.
They say I'm a nice guy, but what they don't know is that I have a darker side, a badder side, a side you don't want to be on the wrong side.
Hey, honey, did you remember to get the milk?
So as I was saying, I can be merciless.
Lease the Infiniti QX50 for $399 a month. Infiniti. Empower the drive.
This is a story about mail and packages. And it's also a story about people. People who rely on us every day to deliver their dreams. They're handing us more than mail. They're handing us their business. And while we make more e-commerce deliveries to homes than anyone else in the country, we never forget that your business is our business. The United States Postal Service. Priority, you.
You are amazing.
Me?
Yes, you. You're a mind-reading marvel, a thoughtful sharer, and a fast-footed friend. And from day one, you've been your cat's hero. That's why you choose Rachel Ray Nutrish, offering recipes with real meat as the #1 ingredient and options with 0 grains or fillers. That's amazing. Nutrish, real recipes, real ingredients, real good.
Far from ordinary, and now far closer than you ever imagined. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
Let's see why people everywhere are upgrading their water filter to zero water. Start with water that has a lot of dissolved solids. Pour it through Brita's 2-stage filter. Dissolved solids remain? What if we filter it over and over? Oh dear. Thank goodness Zero Water's 5-stage filter gets to all zeros the first time. So maybe it's time to upgrade. Get more out of your water. Get Zero Water.
The U.S. Air Force says one of its aircraft crashed this afternoon in New Mexico. It says the incident took place about 65 miles north of Holloman Air Force Base at the Red Rio bombing range. No word yet on the status of the pilot or pilots. It's not clear what type of aircraft was involved yet either. But the crash is the 7th non-combat incident this year for the Air Force. That equals the total for all of last year. Tonight we continue our series looking at the challenges and opportunities for America's infrastructure. This evening, correspondent Douglas Kennedy reports on a new way of going a long way in a short time.
So the Hyperloop is very similar to space travel.
As the lead systems engineer at NASA, Anita Sengupta sent us where no one had gone before. Now, she's just trying to get us there faster.
So this is technology really out of science fiction.
It's technology inspired by science fiction, but it's actually science fact.
It's called Hyperloop, or tube travel, and it will allow humans to go faster than the fastest high-speed train, even faster than some of the fastest planes in the sky. So you'll be able to get from Kansas City to St. Louis or New York to Washington in 30 minutes or less.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're targeting a peak speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour, which is roughly 700 miles an hour.
The tubes create a low-pressure environment, almost completely cutting out drag. But it's the motor that's going to allow Hyperloop to completely change the way we travel.
So you're basically designing a straightened-out version of a conventional rotary motor.
That's correct. So it's called a linear electric motor, and what that means is that you have a rotor and a stator, but they're actually stretched out. So one portion is on the underside of our vehicle, which we call the pod, and the other side is on the bottom of the track.
Startup costs will be in the billions. Nonetheless, Missouri and Colorado both want to be test sites. Dan Katz is Hyperloop's government liaison, and he says one of the big obstacles is writing new regulations for brand new technology.
So you've got pressure systems that are like planes and land systems that are like trains. Who's going to regulate all of this?
Well, the government thinks we're a railroad, but in reality we're a lot more like airplanes.
No matter what, Sengupta says Hyperloop is the future of almost instantaneous travel.
We have not had a new mode of transportation in over 100 years. So this is a way that you can get from point to point across land masses.
Across land masses, but located within city centers. So you'll be able to skip that long drive to the airport or train station. In the Nevada desert, Douglas Kennedy, Fox News.
Fascinating. Up next, confusion from the White House over immigration reform strategy. First, beyond our borders tonight, former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev says if Vladimir Putin and President Trump hold a summit, they should focus on curbing the arms race and ensuring strategic stability. Gorbachev's comments come amid speculation the two leaders will meet next month. President Trump's Middle East team met today with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel to discuss the U.S. plan for peace in the region. The meeting comes shortly before the administration is expected to unveil its strategy. President Trump has promised to pursue what he calls the ultimate deal between Israelis and Palestinians. And a United Nations report says government security forces in Venezuela carry out unjustified killings without any apparent consequences as the rule of law in that country quickly vanishes. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights says Venezuelan officers accused in some 500 questionable killings appear to be evading any charges. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back.
There are so many choices for identity thieves on the dark web, but you can protect yourself with Experian. See if your social security number, phone, and email are at risk with a free dark web triple scan at Experian.com/scan.
Mom? Want to try new grown in Idaho super crispy frozen fries? Cut from 100% real Idaho potatoes. They bake up crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Sure, thanks. New grown in Idaho super crispy fries.
I finally figured out what car to get. Now, where to find the best deal?
You know, why don't I help?
What's that?
Car Gurus. Color?
Silver. Car Gurus?
Low miles, 2 grand below market value, 5-star dealer rating. Ooh, I'm beat.
Let's do it your way then.
I heard that.
Go to Car Gurus today to find great deals from top-rated dealers near you.
1 second. Barely enough time for this man to take a bite of turkey. But for cybercriminals, it's plenty of time to launch thousands of attacks. Luckily, security analysts and Watson are on his side, spotting threats faster and protecting his data with the most securely encrypted mainframe in the world. It's a smart way to eat lunch in peace. Sweet, oblivious peace.
Hey, listen up. We're Hims. And we help you stay looking like this, not like this. Most guys start losing their hair by 35, but thanks to science, baldness can be optional. And so are other man issues. We deliver products directly to you at home. It's easier to take care of yourself than fix it later. Try it out at 4hims.com.
I got a certain way I like to do things. I like Consumer Cellular. I get unlimited talk and text for just $25 a month. They received the J.D. Power Award for highest customer service 4 times in a row.
And Consumer Cellular has been an approved AARP provider since 2008, so we trust them. Reliable nationwide coverage for way less money? That's the way.
We like it.
Now, for a limited time, get a $20 credit on any new line of service. Call, go online, or find us at Target.
We love our pets, and what they eat out of is just as important as what they eat. That's why WeatherTech developed the Pet Comfort Feeding System. Entirely non-toxic and lead-free, made from 100% U.S. stainless steel, and the only pet bowls certified by the NSF. The stand and mat are made from an FDA-approved material enhanced with antimicrobial and antifungal additives. It all adds up to a completely non-toxic feeding system for your pet. Find out everything you need to know at petcomfort.com.
I used to have to go in to the auto parts store. Paid too much, never find quite what I'm looking for. Now I just go online with Rock Auto and see all the parts my car will ever need. Lower prices, more parts, more brands. It's so easy to find the right parts fast. All the parts your car will ever need. Rock Auto. All the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com.
We're gathered today to hear directly from the American victims of illegal immigration. They're not separated for a day or 2 days. These are permanently separated. These are the families the media ignores. As a result of sanctuary city policies in fiscal 2017, more than 8,000 criminal aliens were released back into our civilian population. We don't want people in our country that don't go through a process. We want people in our country based on merit.
President Trump today talking about immigration reform, protecting cities, protecting the country with the border security. Tweeting out, however, raising some eyebrows, Republicans should stop wasting their time on immigration until after we elect more senators and congressmen, women in November. Dems are just playing games, have no intention of doing anything to solve this decades-old problem. We can pass great legislation after the red wave, referring to the election in the fall. Let's bring in our panel. Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner. Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio. And Mort Kondracki, contributor for Real Clear Politics. Mort, welcome back. Start with you.
Hi.
What about this immigration stance and whether Congress is moving or not moving, or what the president's doing in this process?
Look, from the get-go, Trump has been demonizing Mexicans as rapists and murderers. He ran on his xenophobia. He won on xenophobia. He could have had a deal with Chuck Schumer last year. He'd have gotten his wall. The DACA kids would have been legalized. He probably now should add, we won't separate families anymore, but we'll put ankle bracelets on people that we want to keep from melting into the population. He blew up the last deal by insisting that legal immigration be cut in half, even though we need immigrants to pay for Social Security and do jobs that Americans won't do. And now he's blowing up whatever chance there was for a House deal, which Paul Ryan should have tried to make a bipartisan bill. But now Trump says, you're wasting your time. I mean, he said at one point, you know, I like both the Goodlatte bill and the compromise bill. Now he says, I want no bill. So,
yeah.
Fred, I think he just...
What about this and how it plays for the midterm, and how perhaps the president thinks it plays?
Well, he doesn't think it's playing very well. Obviously, you know those tweets where he said we're going to have to go back to the midterm election or go forward to it, and then we can have a red wave, and then we can do something. You know, he's basically right about that. You know, he recognizes he's in a fix. He's not going to get anything passed. The Democrats don't want to pass anything. The Republicans don't have the votes, and he has no great influence on this issue in Congress. So I think it's going to get worse for Trump. We're going to start seeing the thing that Republicans really hate the most, and that's catch and release, because some of these children will be getting released after 20 days, and they can't be allowed to wander around out there, so you have to let their parents out and tell them they can come back for a hearing. Of course, they never come back.
Yeah, Byron.
Well, this is more proof of Republican dysfunction on this issue. They've had trouble with this issue for a very long time. These bills contain the president's #1 campaign promise, his #1 priority on this, which is the construction of a border wall. It takes 215 votes to pass this bill right now. There are 235 Republicans in the House. Does anybody believe there are going to be more Republicans in the House after November? Regardless of what the president says about a red wave, they have a chance to pass a bill that would fund the president's top priority, that would fix the DACA problem, and would address today's current problem of family separations. And yet they are not able to get this together.
Do you take a half a loaf, in other words? Take a listen to the reaction to the tweet from lawmakers up on the Hill.
I think the president's expressing his frustration that Democrats don't want to solve the problem while we do.
We shouldn't do anything legislatively until we can reconnect these children. That has to be our highest priority right now.
I think the president did the right thing. I appreciated his tweet today more than you can imagine.
The president is right. Chuck Schumer said this earlier in the week. They don't want to do anything, but at least the House should show the American people we are doing what we said.
Marm.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Even if everyone knows you can't pass something through the Senate, because as the president keeps on pointing out, you need Democrat votes there, moderate House Republicans were desperate for a chance to just vote on something, just because they're in competitive districts. They want to show their voters they tried to solve the Dreamer problem, they tried to end family separations, but the president pulled out the rug from under them and said, we shouldn't even bother, don't waste your time. I mean, just a couple days ago, he said, I'm with you 1,000%. I'm behind these bills. So a lot of confusion, not just on the policy, not just what's going to happen to these kids on the border, but also what's going to happen on Capitol Hill. This is an issue that up until now has been a pretty good one for him. It energizes his base. It goes back to some really core issues that he's used all along, helped him win the White House. But now I think he's muddied the waters so much it's hard to know what he wants.
Right. More, as you look more, let me just put up the generic congressional ballot as it stands now. Democrat for 46.3, Republicans 40.2. That's the average of the recent polls. It has closed down in recent days. It's tough to see how this all plays, isn't it? By the time you get to the fall.
Yeah, I have no idea how these elections are going to turn out. I think they're going to be all about Trump and his character and so on. But look, if he really wanted a bill, he could put the Democrats to a test, put a decent bill on the table, stick to it, tell Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, I want this bill, and let the Democrats blow it up and prove him right. My guess is that if it was a decent enough bill, he could get a lot more than even the wall. He could probably get an end to the visa lottery, and he could get a gradual change from family reunification to talent as the basis. I think he is basically a xenophobe. He wrote it to the White House. He's got all these European pals of his who are xenophobes, and I think he's just going to ride this wave forever. All right, second half of the Beltway boys. Wrap it up here.
Hey, look, this is an issue that Democrats have finally found a part of the issue that helps them, and that's this whole issue of separation of children from their families. It's about the only one that's been around that Democrats could really use. Trump's going to use not this particular part of the issue, but the whole immigration issue this fall in the midterm, and I think it'll help him.
Okay, stand by, panel. Next up, the life and legacy of Charles Krauthammer. I promised yesterday that when we find Charles addressing issues we're dealing with on the panel, I'm going to be pulling those sound bites and running them on the panel from time to time. As we head to break, Charles, in his own words, on immigration issues.
If this president proposes, and you can see from his earlier indication when it comes to the dreamers, the young people brought here as children, he wants to legalize them. That would be the starting point. The Republicans would offer that, which is an enormous concession, but only if the Democrats support airtight, strong border security, and that means not just a fence or a wall or border security at the border, but things like a system to verify citizenship inside the country and a visa tracking program. If you get that, you can get a national consensus and put the immigration issue behind us.
It's 99-cent Kids Nights at Golden Corral. Every night, kids eat and drink for just 99 cents. Under $1. Woo! It's prime time for family time every night. Come on now. Golden Corral. Your choice rules.
The political thriller of the decade. This book moves like Air Force One, big and fast. Bravo, James Patterson and Bill Clinton. Don't miss. The president is missing.
I'm a tin can tied to your bumper, because I don't think enough people heard about your big day. But nothing says we got married like a 12-ounce piece of scrap metal.
Yo! We got married! Honk if you like joint assets!
Now you're so busy soaking up all the attention.
You don't see the car in front of you.
And if I can crash your perfect day, imagine what I could do to the rest of them. So get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem like me.
I take what I do seriously. I've been doing it for 50 years. All this is about is getting to the bottom line, getting to the truth.
I'm young. I'm not supposed to have high blood pressure.
So if you just learned you have high blood pressure or you're already treating it with medication, you could benefit from adding the Zona Plus to your treatment plan.
Medication is not the answer all the time for treatment of blood pressure.
Zona Plus therapy is safe and easy to do at home or on the go. Each daily treatment takes only 12 minutes. Do it while you're watching TV, during breakfast, relaxing, even before a workout.
I started using the Zona, and within the first 2 weeks, I was noticing a big difference. It was very exciting.
I've been using it now for about 1.5 years, and I absolutely love it.
A drug-free, software-controlled, handheld device that's clinically proven to help lower blood pressure. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of prescriptions, so the idea of using a non-invasive medical device seemed like a great alternative. The science behind the Zona Plus is based on an isometric technology, which was initially developed by a respected cardiopulmonary physiologist. Same technology evolved into the patented Zona Plus therapy.
Every once in a while, I remind him, are you doing your Zona? And he'll say, yep.
Every day. Neither of us take any medication for blood pressure anymore.
No.
It's all done.
In fact, in studies, 90% of people lower their blood pressure from 10 to 15 points in as few as 4 to 8 weeks.
I'm the type of person that needs to be in control of my life. And the Zona Plus gives me that opportunity to be in control of my blood pressure. And that is such an empowering feeling.
And with the company's fantastic 90-day money-back guarantee, backed by a full refund of the purchase price, there's no risk. You have everything to gain by giving Zona Plus a try for 90 days.
Call now at 800-830-2039 or visit us online at zonaplus.com.
What's interesting about it is that it's such a remarkable historical reversal, because we, in the last 30 years, have become accustomed to being on the side of supporting a government against an insurgency in Vietnam and in other places. It's our belief in wars of national liberation, and they happen to be wars of Democrats who are fighting communist regimes. It's not just a random series of policies supporting an insurgency here and an insurgency there. I think it amounts to a very significant shift in our history of containment.
Dr. Charles Krauthammer, in 1986, talking about the Reagan Doctrine, a term he coined. We're back with our panel for some reflections, some stories, some panel time. Fred, Mort, Mara, you spent a lot of time with Charles on the panel. Byron, in recent years, you have as well. Fred, let's start with you.
Well, you know, he was just a wonderful guy, and it was great to watch him become a real conservative. You know, starting out with the whole Reagan doctrine, which I'm sure, well, actually, we know that Reagan was glad to hear about it, that he had really carved out this doctrine. You know, when you think about Reagan and Charles together, you think about the most conservative political leader in America, that's Reagan, and the most important and influential political intellectual as well. Both of them former Democrats, former liberals, becoming conservatives, and it was a powerful force. Both of them, not just Reagan, but Charles as well. And they were the force in American politics for 25 years.
You know, Mort, you worked with him not only as a panelist here, but before that at the New Republic. George Will wrote this. He said, "Some people are such a large presence while living that they still occupy space even when they're gone." Mort?
Yeah. We were friends for 40 years, and besides, you know, losing a dear friend of us all, we've really lost a national treasure. I mean, he was the most brilliant commentator of our time. I think he's up there with Walter Lippmann and Dorothy Thompson and Bill Buckley and maybe even George Orwell. You know, he used to joke that his training as a psychiatrist was good preparation for covering American politics, which is getting crazier and more toxic by the day. He's the one who coined Bush derangement syndrome, you know, the tendency of liberals to not give George W. Bush credit for anything. And I think he got Donald Trump just right, you know, governed by id, reckless, worse than narcissistic. He, in one of his last columns, I think he optimistically said that the guardrails of American democracy are holding because the Boy Scouts and the police chiefs repudiated what Trump said, and the Senate wouldn't cancel Obamacare and wouldn't let him fire Jeff Sessions. I think it was overly optimistic. In fact, because Charles was the most influential conservative columnist, the one conservative columnist that all conservatives listened to, I think he was one of the guardrails of American democracy, and now he's gone, and I think we all should be weeping.
You know, Mort, and Mar, to you, Charles, obviously was very critical of candidate Trump, but after President Trump won the election, Charles reflected a lot about what he said early on, and he talked about what he was seeing and how it had evolved. Here is an interaction he had with Tucker after a rally in West Virginia by Trump.
These are real people. Forget about the numbers. Forget about the chatter in Washington. Forget about the stories about Russia, which he spent a lot of time on. But I represent a huge constituency of tremendous support and enthusiasm. He wasn't very specific on policy, but he said, I'm bringing you guys back. I'm the only one who listened. You were abandoned. That's his appeal. That's how he won the election. And he's reminding the elites that that appeal is still there.
Mara.
Yeah, look, Charles was a conservative intellectual, and he looked at things the way they were. He wasn't a knee-jerk anything, and there was nothing post-truth about Charles. If Trump did something right, he praised him for it. He wasn't a reflexive never-Trumper, and I think that's why it's so great that you're going to keep on playing these clips of him, even from beyond the grave, because he had so much to say that's still going to be relevant. I think that his passing is such a loss for conservatism. It's such a loss for public discourse, which, as Mort just said, is getting more toxic and tribal and ugly by the day. Charles was the antidote to all of that. I am so honored that I got to sit next to him for all these years because my seat was usually right next to Charles. He also had an incredibly sweet, sunny disposition. I don't think I ever saw Charles dark or angry at anything. And I think that's why he was able to kind of persevere through all of the incredible obstacles that life handed out to him, which he did not dwell on for a second.
for a second. You know, I spent a lot of time with Charles, especially on that special, hours of interviews, and wanted to talk to him, and he was reticent to do it at the beginning, reluctant, I guess. Here it is. I'm asking him about another love of his, not just baseball, but chess. I want to play the soundbite, Byron.
You write about this Pariah Chess Club, the weekly games at your house. Do you still play?
No, I gave it up. It's an addiction.
Completely.
It's a poison. I mean, it's, you know, you reach a point when you're on the internet, you know, middle of the night, and you're playing speed chess, where you realize you're in a motel room and you're drinking Aqua Velva. You know you've hit bottom and you need an intervention. So that's
for chess?
Yeah, for chess. You cancel your subscription and you just don't do it again. Yeah, I have binges. For several years, this has happened to me ever since I was about 20.
he could crack me up, Byron. It was amazing.
You talk about a mind that was working all the time. One thing I did among all these things that have been said about Charles, I went back and looked at the transcripts of some of the special report panels here. He had an incredible gift for speaking in perfectly formed paragraphs, one perfect sentence after another, while the rest of us stumbled over uhs and ahs. He spoke in sentences that could be published as is, and I really think that's one of the reasons he was so effective as a communicator.
He was an op-ed on the panel every night. Panelists, thanks so much, and thanks for coming back, Mort and Fred. When we come back, a special Charles Krauthammer edition of Notable Quotables.
In the last 4 days of the Joseph A. Bank Lowest Prices of the Season event, save up to 85% store-wide. Find suits $179.